Hey everyone, Steve Adubato. This is Lessons in Leadership. My co-anchor, our executive producer, Mary Gamba. Mary, we kick off the program with a terrific leader who understands leadership from so many perspectives. He is Dennis Pullin, who is president and CEO of Virtua Health. He's the author of Suited for Leadership, How to Show Up with Purpose and Have Lasting Impact. Dennis, it's great to see you.
Steve, thanks for having me on, and thanks for the excellent leader reference there. I appreciate that.
Well, it's all true. And also want to thank Christina Renna, who is the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, Southern New Jersey. They're one of our new media partners down in the southern part of the state. We're doing more and more programming that is South Jersey centric. By the way, this book, Dennis, this is fascinating. Could you just talk about the title first, Suited for Leadership? Because that is not just some random title. Please explain it.
It's not. It's one, it's a reference to my appreciation for a nice tailored suit, but it really does speak to how leadership is not a one-size-fits-all. And it's about being intentional. It's about showing up with purpose. So I tried to find a way in terms of correlating how a finely tailored suit is constructed to a great leader.
Have you always been a student of leadership? By the way, let's put up the website for Virtua Health so people can find out more. Have you always been not just a leader, but a student of leadership? Because one of the things I picked up early on in the book is you are a lifelong learner.
I am. And part of it was, as you will notice in the book, there's not a lot of references or a lot of research. It's about my life's experience. I've had the opportunity, I'm sure like many of your listeners, to work with some great leaders and some not so great leaders. And I found that I can learn from both. And I decided a long time ago that I wanted to create this toolkit for myself. And so I would just make note of those attributes that I saw in great leaders, as well as those individuals who I didn't have an awful lot of respect for their leadership style, and made note of those things to make sure that they weren't in my toolkit.
It's so interesting that Dennis says that, Mary. I've often said, and in my book on leadership, and that I would not have been able to write without Mary and a great team, Lessons in Leadership. I've lost count of the number of leadership lessons I've learned from pretty bad leaders. Just say, wow, I'm looking how people are reacting to this. And I'm sure people have looked at me and said on the team, I didn't like how Steve handled that. I need to take that and make a note of not doing it. Anyway, I'm off my soapbox. Mary,
no, but Steve, those are some of the greatest lessons to learn, because it builds the character and it builds the leader that you ultimately will become.
100%. Mary?
And Dennis, in that same vein, everything that you're talking about right now ties into humanity. And I know that you talk about champions of humanity and what it means to be truly connected, to make sure that you are having that impact and touching lives. Talk about what champions of humanity means to you, and more importantly, how you instill that in folks at Virtua in what you do every day.
So Mary, it's very simple. To me, champions of humanity speaks to everyone has value. It doesn't matter how you show up or what life's experiences you bring to the table, you still are valued. And in a time where, a country that can be divisive in so many ways, if we think about treating everybody like they matter, that's what's important. So you mentioned how we translate that here at Virtua Health. We have open arms to anyone that wants to come and trust us with their care. But the problem is not everyone have the ability to get to us. So for those that can, we embrace them with open arms. Those that can't, we extend the hand. We extend the hand by meeting people where they are. And that's where the humanity piece comes in. When you treat everyone like they are valued and they matter, and to be a very inclusive organization.
I want to follow up on that, Dennis. In our other programming, State of Affairs, which is state public policy centric, we do a series simply called Trust in Public Health. We're doing in cooperation with the New Jersey Department of Health. And you go on their website to find out more. We're also doing a lot on vaccines, what you need to know. It's a series we're doing as well. Why is this relevant? I said to you before we got on the air, Dennis, that I'm a big fan of ESPN, of Stephen A. Smith's, of First Take. And I remember watching one morning early on in COVID, and I'm not going to go into great detail because this is Dennis's impact, right? Mary, you and I just did a seminar on impact over activity. Think about this impact. Stephen A. Smith on the air early on in COVID, tremendous lack of trust on the part of many, particularly people of color. Not particularly, but there was a real issue. Pick up the story. It's not a story, it's real. And the impact that you had, Stephen A. had, and why it matters so much. Because if this isn't leadership, I don't know what is. Please,
and thanks for bringing that up, Stephen. I'll try and unpack it the best I can. For me, being a leader, being an effective leader is about your ability to communicate. And I sort of break it down into three very simple principles that I think about as a communicator. That's the messenger, the message, and the messaging. The messenger, are you credible? Do people see you as the leader that you portray yourself? The message, do you have a narrative that makes sense, that is truly, based on best practices or research? And then the messaging, can you articulate it in a way in which it's digestible and that people can embrace it? Well, during COVID, to your point about the lack of trust in the science, a lack of trust in some of us leaders in healthcare and as individuals. And I had a conversation one evening with Stephen A. I reached out to a lot of my friends during that time to just check on their well-being, make sure that they were getting the vaccine. I reached out to Stephen A. and he was not going to take the vaccine. He just didn't trust the science. He didn't trust the information that was coming out. We spent about 45 minutes really talking about why he should. And at the end of the evening, we hung up. I felt I had did my part as a friend, as a leader. He calls me back the next morning about, 9:50. Hey, D, I'm going on the air in about 10 minutes. I decided to take the vaccine. Tell me everything you told me last night. Yeah, in 2 minutes. Okay, Stephen, I'll do that. And he did just that. He went on the air and mentioned that he had spoken with me and we had a great conversation, and he had decided to not only get the vaccine, but he was going to come down to South Jersey and do it with cameras rolling. And to his word, he did exactly that. Why does that have an impact? Because Stephen's voice had such an impact that we saw a tremendous lift in the number of people of color, the number of minorities that came in after that broadcast, after it was on ESPN, after it was on CNN, after it hit most of the media outlets. And so it just shows the power of communication, the power of leadership, the power of being credible, having the right narrative, and articulating it in a way that it's digestible for folks. That's a responsibility we need to be mindful of as leaders. Our words, our thoughts can have tremendous impact if used appropriately. That was a long answer to a very short question. I promise I'll be a little more concise in the future.
No. And by the way, get the book, Suited for Leadership, How to Show Up with Purpose to Have a Lasting Impact. And Dennis W. Pullin is the author, President CEO of Virtua Health, a very important healthcare institution in the southern part of the state. By the way, how would you describe your footprint, if you will, of Virtua?
Virtua primarily is focused in the southern part of the state. We focus on primarily 3 counties, Camden, Burlington, and Gloucester. But we also have our enterprise goes throughout the state into Pennsylvania as well as into Delaware. So, we focus on taking care of those who need us the most.
Mary, final question for Dennis.
Dennis, while you were talking, the one word that kept coming to my mind is authenticity. And I know that you talked about it in your book as well. And just hearing that journey that you just shared, that authenticity of, you want to know what, I don't believe in the vaccine, but now the authenticity to say, okay, I wasn't right, I'm going to go on the air and do that. How do you instill that in the team at Virtua? How do you attract, train, retain talented physicians, nurses, team members, administration that are authentic, but also get the job done? Just talk a little bit about that.
Mary, that is a great question. For me, authenticity is sort of when your words and your actions align. when they reconcile. And I think as a leader, being authentic means that you are approachable, you are transparent. And to me, that also builds trust. And there is no greater principle for effective leadership than trust. Trust allows you to get to know people and people to get to know you. And I think you can lead better. And people are attracted to that. Authenticity is something that for a lot of folks is difficult to define, but you know it when you see it. And when you see it, you're attracted to it. And it allows you to then, surround yourself with impactful people. And that's what we try and do at Virtua, get impactful people, people that believe in our mission, and people that are committed to living it out.
You're listening to and watching a terrific leader. He is Dennis Pullin, President and CEO of Virtua Health and author of the book, Suited for Leadership, How to Show Up with Purpose to Have Lasting Impact. This is the book. I've been enjoying it. And there's a lot in here also. And next time we have Dennis on, Dennis, we're going to talk about the connection between golf. You and I are avid golfers. Let's just say we play with different kinds of people in different places. You got some very prestigious friends.
Steve, I have some good friends, and I would love to talk to you about that connection in golf and leadership. And I think the last thing that I would love to say
Sure, please.
About the book, and I appreciate you guys having me on and talking
Absolutely.
about the book, but the most important thing about this book is that 100% of the proceeds are being donated back to Virtua's Eat Well program as we try and address food insecurities throughout South Jersey.
Leadership and giving back. Dennis, it is so great to meet you, and to our partners and friends in the southern part of the state. They know what Virtua is all about, and now hopefully some other people as well. And also Google and check out Dennis Pullin and his work and his leadership and his message. We appreciate it, and we look forward to having a partnership moving forward. Thank you, Dennis.
Steve, Mary, thanks for having me on.
You got it. I'm Steve Adubato and Mary Gamba. This is Lessons in Leadership. Stay with us. We'll be right back. This edition of Lessons in Leadership is made possible by the Buccino Leadership Institute at Seton Hall University, Prager Metis, Valley Bank, the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825, NJ Transit, the North Ward Center, O'Toole Scrivo, Gingoli Construction, the New Jersey Sharing Network, Delta Dental of New Jersey, The Helix, Fedway Associates Inc., the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, Choose New Jersey, and Seton Hall University, inspiring great minds to greater purpose since 1856.
This is Mary Gamba. If you want more leadership tips and tools, log on to stand-deliver.com. That's stand-deliver.com.
Promotional support for this edition of Lessons in Leadership with me, Steve Adubato, and my colleague Mary Gamba has been provided by NJ.com, NJBIA and New Jersey Business Magazine, CIANJ and Commerce Magazine, and the Meadowlands Chamber and Meadowlands Media.
Visitors traveling to New Jersey for the FIFA World Cup can use New Jersey Transit services statewide. Train, bus, light rail, and paratransit services connect riders to Newark Liberty International Airport, MetLife Stadium, New York City, and communities throughout New Jersey. New Jersey Transit's Safe Passage initiative raises awareness about the signs of human trafficking and encourages reporting suspicious activity. Travel information, schedules, and safe passage resources are available at njtransit.com.
Welcome back to Lessons in Leadership. Steve Adubato. This is part of our mini-series called Leaders in Law, made possible by our good friends at O'Toole Scrivo. And Kevin O'Toole called me and he said, "Hey, Steve, leaders in law." I'll tell you who's a leader in law. Patrick P. Toscano Jr., managing partner, the Toscano Law Firm, LLC. And as usual, O'Toole is right. How you doing, Pat?
Fantastic, Steve. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
You represent, as an attorney, you represent law enforcement professionals.
Probably, Steve, no exaggeration, probably on the average of 100 to 200 new officers, each year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's the thing that I wanted to get at, and I said this to O'Toole. What is that the rest of us, civilians, who do not have a law enforcement connection? Mary's husband for many years, a law enforcement professional. What don't we civilians understand about law enforcement leadership? What could we never understand?
Steve, with all due respect, what don't you know is just about everything. And I say that again, with all due respect. And again, I mean that sincerely. The average person has no comprehension, even though they think they do. And again, I say that respectfully to the laity, to the public, of what a law enforcement officer goes through day in and day out when he or she initially gets to the job, right? Appears at the job, puts the vest on, and most importantly, in the year 2026, activates that BWC, that body-worn camera, when they take a police action. They have absolutely no idea.
Mary?
It's so, and Steve and I often will talk about this. And Steve, before we came on the air with Patrick yesterday, we were talking about this segment. And I said, oftentimes I'll push back with Steve. I said, it's so easy to play Monday morning quarterbacking when an issue happens. Pat, you had mentioned if somebody does have on that body camera, it was easier, if you will, say 20, 25 years ago, when you would just be able to believe and trust in, what the situation was. But now you have that camera. Can you talk a little bit more about those split decisions? When you are in that moment and you are an officer, you're walking up to a car that you just pulled over, you don't know if it's going to be a mom with a baby or a drug deal gone wrong. Talk about how these officers need to make that split decision and how that ties back to leadership and law enforcement.
I'll harken back to when I was a new prosecutor, brand new prosecutor back in, I think it was around 86, where Dan Smith, God rest his soul, he was a county police officer, pulls over a car on Route 280, walks up to the car, doesn't realize, I think the guy's name, the defendant's name was Butchie Parsons, had a sawed-off shotgun on his lap, took a shot at him, and I don't want to tell you what happened, where we ended up finding parts of Officer Smith's, who's a hero, right? I don't have to say that, his head and his brain. I mean, it was in this, I can't explain to you. I mean, I make my living with words, and I can't explain what we saw, how graphic that was. Now, that having been said, the BWCs now, the body-worn cameras, tremendous advancements in law enforcement and helps every law enforcement officer to the hill, whether he or she is pulling someone over initially, whether they're taking a police action, whatever it may be. Now, the average person will hear something about what happened. For example, the topic nowadays seems to be shooting. First of all, again, I don't want to sound facetious with you. A law enforcement officer is not allowed to discharge his weapon or her weapon until after they're shot and killed. Once that happens, then they're allowed to discharge their weapon. It sounds facetious, doesn't it? It's
by
not
law.
by law, Steve. It's absolutely unbelievable when they do take a police action. Immediately, the public seems to just say, he or she shouldn't have shot. They didn't have to shoot. They didn't have to do this. They didn't have to do that. They immediately, what they call cleared leather and took a shot. They killed this man. This man didn't mean any harm. They have no comprehension of what the evidence reveals, no comprehension of what the BWC will reveal eventually. And immediately all we're seeing nowadays are protests. This man shouldn't have been killed. This man didn't do anything. And the officer is demonized from square one.
In fact, I would like to jump in there real fast if you don't mind. And then, Steve, if you don't mind, just one quickie there.
By the way, Mary, many people are watching right now, as you say what you're going to say, are thinking about Minneapolis.
Of course. And
they're
the
thinking
media.
about what they saw with their own eyes. And they're going to say, hold on, what Toscano's saying, that doesn't comport with what I think I just saw. Pick up your point, Mary.
What responsibility, Pat, does the media have in reporting information that is accurate, but not sensationalizing and knowing you're going to get a lot more eyeballs on showing one particular side of a story versus all of the good that's going out there and that police officer that went out and, saved a child from a burning building or something like that? What role as leaders does the media play in painting an accurate picture of what's going on?
Mary, that's spot on. You don't need me to say it. Spot on question. Okay, so the media, and I say it again with due respect, of course.
By the way, no disrespect. I appreciate Mary's question, and Mary and I usually don't argue on the air. It's not our job to report that a cop did his job today,
Steve,
because that's the cop's job.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go right ahead. You
No,
took
but
the
it's
words right out
also
of my
if they
mouth.
twist it, though, if they don't really even
that's
know,
different.
they just jump on that bandwagon.
Totally different, Mary. Point well taken.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Your
Pat.
job is to report here. The job is to report the news. And I've had, head-on collisions many times with members of the media where I tell them your job is to report the news, not to make it. So listen, it starts with the headline, officer kills, officer does this, officer does that. Why don't you just report what happened? Okay, first of all, you don't get into the evidence at all. Just report what happened, the pragmatics of what happened, and then maybe add during the article, somewhere in the reporting, that of course the evidence hasn't come to the forefront. It's brand new. You have to review every body-worn camera of every officer who was on the scene. You have to see what happened initially when the officer took the police action and before the BWC button was pushed, which oftentimes happens very quickly. You follow me? In other words, as soon as the officer takes a police action, he or she has to press the button. Well, many times, oftentimes, something will happen prior when you approach a car, when you approach a defendant, whatever it might be, after a surveillance where you're not pressing right away because it's investigatory, right?
Got it.
What happened prior to the BWC being activated oftentimes tells the entire story.
100%. But here's the struggle I have, and I'm not alone. Many of us, and our mutual friends, and the vast majority, and Kevin and Kevin O'Toole and Tom Scrivo at O'Toole Scrivo and others know a high percentage of our friends are cops.
They sure are.
And we're proud of that. We're back the blue people. But we're also, I'll speak for myself. When I think of someone like Derek Chauvin in the case involving George Floyd, knee on his neck, 4 cops standing there, I think about leadership. And I go, okay, I'm sure the video is more complex than that. But at a certain point, when something is dead wrong, I argue that leadership in law enforcement and in any field, Mary and Patrick, is acknowledging that's wrong. Because what I'm hearing, so far, the cops are always the victims. And what I'm saying is many times that's true. Many times it's too easy to jump on the bandwagon when we don't even know what a cop's life is like in those split-second decisions Mary was saying. But sometimes when cops do make a mistake, leadership to me is acknowledging the mistake. Am I wrong about that, Pat?
Steve, you're 1,000% right. Keeping in mind, my friend, that for every one Derek Chauvin, I believe his name was, there's 10,000. There's 10,000. And when I say 10,000, I'm not being facetious.
I'm sure it's more than that.
That's exactly right. Who would not have done that? Something like that. The amazing part of that, and it's funny that you brought that up, Steve. It's almost ironic, is how he was on the job without undergoing what we call an FFD, a fitness for duty evaluation, which officers have to go through every now and then, or when a chief of police or a commanding officer has just cause to believe that he or she has some sort of issue. Now, how the man was on the job when he did what he did on camera, I have no comprehension. I have said it from day one, how the man was not sent for a fitness for duty evaluation, because if that was conducted appropriately, there's no way the man would have been on the job. He either would have been suspended with pay, suspended without pay, or it would have been an administrative action looking to terminate him.
And by the way, every good cop I know, which is pretty much all of them, acknowledge that it was wrong. And go ahead, Mary, jump in.
No, and you're absolutely right, Steve. And there's no, I don't think there's anyone out there that said that he did the right thing. And Pat, Steve
but also there were 4 cops there.
And I was just going to say that, Pat. So exactly. And when it comes to the new up and coming legal professionals, how do you balance that with the, okay, we want you to go into law, but we also want you to understand the humanity, if you will, of what they're going to be addressing, especially with the type of law that you're practicing dealing with law enforcement? How are you attracting those young legal professionals into your specific field?
Well, you're being honest with them, with him or her, and you have to say from square one, listen, you're not only a police officer, you have to become a police officer, a psychologist, a judge, a juror, an expert witness, an internal affairs expert. Oh, and by the way, since 2024, a PTC, Police Training Commission expert. And by the way, you have to do that all in the span of 15 seconds when you come up to a car and the car either comes directly at you in an effort to kill you and take off, or the individual in the car may have some sort of weapon and he or she's going to blow your head off. So you start by telling them the truth there.
Pat, who the heck has those skills? Pat, who has those skills?
Steve, it's again, of course I'm pro law enforcement. 40 years. Steve, where you and I grew up, North Newark. I grew up on First Avenue. You had to be law enforcement. You and I, your family, you were grown to support law enforcement. Absolutely right. So you start by telling them what it's really about, but then you have to temper that because it's meaningful work. It is, in fact, decent pay. And in fact, if you go to Bergen County, the salaries are fantastic. The benefits are there, okay? There's flexibility, there's variety. A police officer has a different job every single day. And no matter what you're hearing about how impossible it is, the job, there's a camaraderie among law enforcement that you will see nowhere else, Steve. Listen, I've been a lawyer. It was 40 years 2 months ago in January. And I love being a lawyer. But Steve, lawyers will stab each other in the back under any circumstance.
Not at El Tool Scrivo.
Absolutely. You're 1,000% correct. That's why they're so much different. But I mean, and I say that freely. Police officers, and by the way, it's not this blue wall of silence where they're covering up murders and everything else. It's not about that. It's 2026. But there is that camaraderie because police officers realize what each other has to do day in and day out and how impossible it is. Steve, as a police officer...
Got a minute left. Go ahead. Minute left, Pat. Go ahead.
Yep. You're risking your career. You're risking...
your life. Every day.
Pension, and by the way, your well-being of your family, your wife or husband and children, right? For strangers. And the average person doesn't pick up on that, doesn't fully comprehend it. You're doing it day in and day out for people you have never met, complete strangers.
Let me just say this final word on this. By the way, there's so much more. And Pat, we'll have you on to have a more detailed discussion on this. Our good friend, who the former sheriff in Essex County, Armando Fontoura, who is a personal friend, and we go back a long way, you know him well. And he often talks about 9/11. And he says, remember, cops were running into the building when everybody was trying to get out. Because just think about that. Who does that to help save strangers? I mean, it's a special breed of people.
It sure is, Steve. I'm sorry, it sure is. And I'll tell you something else. Who follows directly in his footsteps, Armando, same mindset. The new sheriff in Essex, Amir Jones.
Amir's terrific.
Terrific.
Best.
Laid back, quiet, and a brilliant law enforcement mind.
By the way,
keep an eye on Amir Jones.
Check out website, steveadubato.org, for the interview with Amir Jones. Hey, Pat, terrific, compelling, important conversation. And we'll talk again. Lessons in Leadership, Steve Adubato, Mary Gamba, Pat Toscano. See you next time. This edition of Lessons in Leadership is made possible by the Buccino Leadership Institute at Seton Hall University, Craig Metis, Valley Bank, the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825, NJ Transit, the North Ward Center, O'Toole Scrivo, Gingoli Construction, the New Jersey Sharing Network, Delta Dental of New Jersey, The Helix, Fedway Associates, Inc., the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, Choose New Jersey, and Seton Hall University, inspiring great minds to greater purpose since 1856.
This is Mary Gamba. If you want more leadership tips and tools, log on to stand-deliver.com. That's stand-deliver.com.
Promotional support for this edition of Lessons in Leadership with me, Steve Adubato, and my colleague Mary Gamba has been provided by NJ.com, NJBIA and New Jersey Business Magazine, CIANJ and Commerce Magazine, and the Meadowlands Chamber and Meadowlands Media.
Visitors traveling to New Jersey for the FIFA World Cup can use New Jersey Transit services statewide. Train, bus, light rail, and paratransit services connect riders to Newark Liberty International Airport, MetLife Stadium, New York City, and communities throughout New Jersey. New Jersey Transit's Safe Passage Initiative raises awareness about the signs of human trafficking and encourages reporting suspicious activity. Travel information, schedules, and safe passage resources are available at njtransit.com.